Morning, everyone, and welcome to Perth County Council, this 6th day of July. I'd like to call our meeting to order. If everyone could please bow their head for a moment of reflection. Thank you. Before we start our meeting this morning, I'd like to welcome our new manager of planning, Andrea Hackler. We're so happy to have you here with us this morning, and we welcome you to Perth County Council. Yes. Okay, we will proceed now. We have our land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that Perth County is situated on the traditional land of the Anishinaabe, who have a long-standing relationship with the land and water throughout the region. We honor and respect the history, languages, and culture of the diverse Indigenous, Métis, and Inuit people who call the territory home. As a county, we have a responsibility for reconciliation and the continued stewardship of the land on which we live and work. Excuse me. If you have pecuniary interest, you can disclose that now or as the meeting moves along. We do have 24 items on our consent agenda. Is there anyone would like one pulled, or they have? Oh, wait a minute. Sorry, I got to back up. I did not do the confirmation of the agenda. So we do have an addition, and that's item 14.1, a matter pertaining to labor relations in planning. And then we need a motion that the July 6, 2023 agenda be approved as amended. Moved by Councillor Orr, second by Councillor Aitchison. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, now we get to the consent agenda. We do have 24 items on our agenda. Is there any one item that someone would like pulled or they have questions on? Nope. Okay, so then we have a motion that council receives the consent agenda items 6.1 to 6.24 and approves the June 15, 2023 council minutes. Moved by Councillor McDermott, second by Councillor Duncan. All in favor? Carried. You have to bear with me this morning. It's been quite a week. Anyway, we do have public meetings. So we need to adjourn regular meeting of council, that regular council recess for the purpose of holding a planning public meeting at approximately 9:03. Moved by Deputy Warden Kellum, second by Councillor McKenzie. All in favor? Carried. Okay, so the first thing on our public meeting is that we approve the agenda. So the planning public meeting, July 6th, agenda be approved. Moved by Councillor McDermott, second by Councillor Trenkowski. All in favor? Carried.
Just do a disclosure. Disclosure here.
Right, okay, so I'll call this part of the meeting to order. If you have pecuniary interest, you can disclose that now or as we go along in the agenda. Did I do the confirmation of the agenda? I guess I did. Yep, I'm jumping ahead. Okay, we need the approval of minutes from the meeting of May 18th. So council approves the minutes for the May 18th, 2023 planning public meeting. Moved by Councillor McDermott, second by Councillor Orr. All in favor? Carried. Okay, we're going to do OPA number 204, the Vosen. And Jarek is going to do that for us this morning. Jerica, the floor is yours and welcome to County Council.
Thank you, Warden, and thank you, Council. Glad to be here this morning. I'll just wait for my presentation to come up. But what we're doing this morning is official plan amendment 204. This is going to be a public meeting. There's no recommended action for council at this time, aside from taking public input and comments. So this lot is in the municipality of West Perth. It is south of the community of Fullerton, which is a small hamlet settlement area in our area. The applicants are the Vosen family, and Carolyn Baker of Baker Planning Group is representing them as their planner. So if you want to go to the next slide. So there is a few things that are going on with this property. The goal of the property owners is that they would like to construct a single detached house on an existing lot of record. Now, what has triggered this application is that the land is currently designated as mineral aggregate resources. The lot is approximately 1.1 hectare or 2.7 acres with 92.5 meters of frontage on Perth Road 163. It contains natural features associated with the North Thames River that flows adjacent to the property to the east, which you can see to the top of the screen there. There are residential uses to the northeast of the property, and there's farm operations to the northwest, west, and south that include livestock facilities. So Thamesview Farms Limited and Fernwood Dairy Farms Limited. The applicant has submitted a number of studies to support their application, including a planning letter, an aggregate potential evaluation, an environmental impact study, and MDS calculations. So it's worth noting too that this application is, oh no, you can go to the next one. Sorry. It's worth noting that this application is submitted concurrently with a zoning bylaw amendment to the municipality of West Perth. But this is what is the end goal, is to have this area that's designated as a building envelope redesignated from mineral aggregate resources, primary or secondary, to agriculture. So next slide, we're going to run down through what these, oh, sorry, I always forget the site tour. So this is kind of a few photos of the property. So there's quite a lot of trees. The picture to the left is looking out on the road to Road 163. And then the second picture is looking to the right. It's across the road looking in. Next slide. As you can see on the key map, this is kind of going down into the property where that building envelope would be proposed, looking towards the river. And then on the next slide, we have some photos looking to the river and then also standing kind of close to the bank looking out. So that's the property that we're dealing with. And there's only a small section that is proposed to be part of the building envelope for a small house. Next slide. So what we currently have on the property is mineral aggregate resources and floodplain. There's no proposed changes to the floodplain. What is proposed is that an agricultural designation be placed on the property, along with a natural resource / environment designation for an existing woodlot. And the reasons for this change is that changing the lot from mineral aggregate resources to agriculture would enact the existing lot of record policies under the official plan. So as long as the lot met a certain criteria, they would be able to have a single detached house. Now, one of those criteria is the rezoning through West Perth Council to recognize a reduction in MDS. But it will, in theory, if the official plan OPA 204 is approved, then West Perth Council is enabled to evaluate that decision. So next slide. So this is just in greater detail and blown up what the new designation would look like. So again, on the left, that's the official plan designations. No changes to the floodplain. A significant portion of the property, as illustrated by the environmental impact study, would be designated natural resource environment. That would be a woodlot. For that part would be protected for future use. And then that small portion of the property would be to the bottom left, would be designated agriculture. And then for an instance, if this change occurred with OPA 204, to the right is the proposed rezoning. So very similar. So it would go from A2, which is a special provision in zoning bylaws to recognize mineral aggregate resources that normally prohibit single detached houses. That would be changing to agriculture and natural resource environment, in addition to having an adjacent land overlay around the woodlot to ensure that there is that 10-meter buffer between development and the natural heritage feature. So next slide. This is just demonstrating kind of where we were at when this application was reviewed by the Upper Thames Conservation Authority. They have no issues with OPA 204 so long as the proposed development is outside of the floodplain. The floodplain was a little higher than what the original values were. So there is setbacks incorporated into the zoning bylaw amendment that kind of pushed the development up out of them. And then also that kind of, they identified the woodlot features. And so long as development is outside of the woodlot and the floodplain hazard from the river, then there won't be an issue from them. Next slide. And then this is a breakdown of the requested zoning bylaw special provisions. So just basically identifying where the house could be on the property, and then to permit a reduction in the required minimum distance separation distance. I'm not going to go into too much detail about the MDS reduction since it's my planning opinion that the official plan policies leave it in the arena of West Perth Council to consider and evaluate those. There was a bit of back and forth between the farm operator to the west of the property and planning staff and the applicant's planner on what that distance should be. So we have worked through those and that information will be brought back to West Perth Council, but if any councillors here have questions about that, I can go into further detail. But that is the extent of my presentation for today. If there are any questions, and I'm looking forward to hearing any public feedback as well. So.
Okay, thanks, Jerica. Is there anyone present who wishes to make a presentation or speak in opposition of the application? Okay, if you could please come up to the table one at a time and make your presentation. You could please give your name and your address for the record so that clerk knows who you are, please.
My name is Brian Morris. My address is 3100 Perth Road, 163 Fullerton.
Okay,
Thanks.
please.
I really appreciate you allowing me to speak today. My name is Brian Morris and my wife is Brenda, and our two children and I live at 3100 Perth Road, 163 Fullerton. Pretty much across the road from the property in question. We were in disbelief as to what the Bostons were trying to do with their property when we found out. It was common knowledge that that property could not be built on, and we could see why. It is a property that is very close to the river and also sits quite low. The laneway from the road slopes down toward the river considerably, right from the shoulder of the road. And by the time you reach their proposed building envelope, you are left on a sensitive patch of land not much higher than the river. This is in contrast to any houses all directions from there that either sit on ground much higher or are much further away from the river. We also can't understand how this application can be considered based on the minimum distance required from our barn and manure storage on our property. The distances need to be reduced by more than half to allow this to go through. When looking at the map, if the required distances are applied, you will see that there is land on the other side of the river that isn't suitable to build on just based on that calculation alone. Not to mention that the prevailing wind blows west to east, which is in this case would blow from our barn and manure storage onto the Boston property. Is it understood the level of precedent that would be set if this is approved? And we also have concerns about where a septic system would be placed on a property as such. It appears on their map that, yes, their proposed house may be just past the floodplain, but then where does the septic system go? The property slopes down towards the river. And so a weeping bed can't flow uphill. So it would flow down into the floodplain, down towards the river. And it appears to be a very environmentally sensitive property, and we believe that it should be left as such. And also to avoid conflict with neighboring farmers because of how close it is. It is extremely close to our barn, and we don't even have that big of a barn. And I can't see how that could be even considered. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else speaking in opposition? Okay, if you'd like to come up to the table, please.
Gordon, councillors, thank you. My name is Patrick Cade. My wife and I live at 3135 Perth Road 163, which is just slightly up the road north of the property in question. My wife and I are strongly opposed to these proposed zoning and bylaw amendments. Prospective buyers of this property were informed when it came on the market that absolutely no residential building could take place. If the current owners of the property did not know this at the time of the purchase, then they did not pursue their due diligence, researching the consequences of acquiring a rural property. Retaining an expensive lawyer to attempt to work around this oversight does not excuse them from caveat emptor. Reducing the minimum distance setbacks by half is irresponsible at best. The setbacks are there for a reason. Violating the criteria for livestock and manure storage facilities jeopardizes the purity and safety of drinking water sources in the community. Which party is liable if a well becomes contaminated? Allowing the amendments will set a precedent, opening up the prospect of a rash of purchases by people who have no understanding of rural life. Township residents who farm for a living do not need to be perpetually annoyed with petty grievances about odors, noise, oversized machinery, and so on. If these amendments are allowed, it will be detrimental to the farming operations in the community. We rely on good farming practices for safe food production. Future operation or expansion of current farms must not be jeopardized for the sake of convenience. The impacts on current and future farming enterprises must take precedence. The property in question abuts the north branch of the Thames River. Leaching of lawn fertilizers or herbicides is likely to contaminate the unique area of natural and scientific interest along this part of the Thames River. Destruction of habitat for native flora and fauna species must be considered. The Honorable Steve Clark, Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, has listened to the public opinions of the Ontario Federation of Agriculture and other farming organizations and announced that the provincial government is reassessing its position on allowing urban sprawl to consume rural landscapes. The County of Perth would do well to follow suit. We therefore ask that our objections be considered and the request for zoning and bylaw amendment be denied. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else speaking against? Seeing no one, is there anyone present who wishes to make a presentation or speak in support of the application other than the applicant or the applicant's agent? Seeing no one, does the applicant or the applicant's agent have comments? And I know Caroline Baker's with us on the screen. So good morning, Caroline, and welcome to County Council, and the floor is yours.
Perfect. No, thank you. Good morning, Warden, members of
Can't hear you.
Can you hear me?
Uh-oh.
I hear a nod from Councillor.
Yep, we
Oh,
can hear.
I apologize. We're actually far away right now, so maybe it's just the distance over Zoom. But good morning to you all. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I do have a brief presentation. If I could share screen, if that's acceptable.
Yep.
Thank you. Okay, you can let me know when it's up, if that's working on your end.
Yes, we can do that.
Perfect. And then thank you both for the county planner's presentation and the members of the public. Certainly this application and the property and the proposed development have an extensive and lengthy history working through approvals with the county and West Perth and the Upper Thames Region Conservation Authority. The application that's before you this morning relates solely to the official plan amendment, which is really achieving two things as noted. One is to remove the mineral aggregate designation on the property following the recommendation of an expert that there is no viable resources on this particular property. And that would bring that portion into the agricultural designation. The second component is through this application, because of the level of study done by the applicants, it is proposed that the majority of the site would now come into a natural environment designation. So that would largely be the south and southeast portion of the lot, and its defining feature is a woodlot. As mentioned, there has been a number of studies completed on this site. NRSI was retained to prepare an environmental impact study. This evaluated the natural feature, its location, protection, and associated buffer. Just to address one of the comments from the resident is there has been environmental studies on this property to ensure their continued protection. There has also been floodplain analysis. MTE was retained to prepare full topographical information on the site that has been reviewed by the Upper Thames Conservation Authority and accepted to ensure that any proposed development area is completely outside the floodplain and would not be subject to that flooding risk by the Conservation Authority. The third piece, of course, that we've looked at in terms of ultimately building a house on the site, should West Perth consider the zoning bylaw, is the minimum distance separation. And this is probably the area of this particular project and proposal that has had ongoing discussions. Because of the length of time during this application processing, there has been changes to that particular livestock facility west of the site. There was originally a different livestock in there that produced a calculation. It's now currently unoccupied, which produced a second calculation, but consulting with OMAFRA, looking to essentially take the worst case scenario, which would be putting the pigs in the livestock barn, which is what creates the larger setback. So certainly we will continue to work with the county and the neighbors on that. And should the OPA be approved, certainly West Perth Council. But the matter before you this morning is directly related to providing additional natural environment protection for the woodlot and removing the mineral aggregate designation as this site's location, size, and geographic or geological composition is not suitable for aggregate extraction. I believe that would conclude my comments, but certainly happy I can stop share or answer any questions that either members of council or the public may have.
Okay, any questions from members of council? No questions? Okay, we have a motion and that council receives the Perth County Official Plan Amendment number 204, Boson Report for lands described as Part Lot 13, Concession 13, Part 1, Plan 44R 3169, 3111 Perth Road 163, Fullerton Ward, Municipality of West Perth, and that council receives comments from the public for consideration regarding official plan amendment number 204 to the County of Perth official plan affecting lands described as Part Lot 13, Concession 13, Part 1, Plan 44R 3169, 3111 Perth Road 163, Fullerton Ward, Municipality of West Perth. We need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Aitchison, second by Councillor Duncan. Any more comments or questions? All in favor? Carried. Okay, our second public meeting is OPA 217 for Alice and Todd Steinman. And Renee is going to do that.
Good morning, Board of Agates, council members, members of the public. I'm presenting to you the official plan amendment 217 for lands located at 424 Road 108A in the township of Perth East. The owners are Alice and Todd Steinman, and the application was submitted by Caroline Baker. Can you go to the next slide, please? Thanks. The property is on Perth Line 26, west of Road 108A, and it's across from the boundaries of Oxford County. The subject lands are designated primary or secondary aggregate resource, natural resource environment, and agriculture. The Perth County official plan. Part of the farm is within the natural hazard area regulated by the Upper Thames River Conservation Area, but the residential cluster is not within the Conservation Authority regulated lands. And the purpose of this application is to change the designation of a portion of the subject land from primary or secondary aggregate resource to agriculture in order to consider a consent application for a surplus farm dwelling that is 0.85 hectare in size. The subject property in total has an area of 41.2 hectare. And as I mentioned, the consent application has been submitted along with the zoning bylaw amendment application as well, which will be discussed later. The owners do operate another active farming operation with a house, and therefore this residence on the subject land is surplus to their needs. Now I'm going to talk about the primary secondary aggregate resource designation. So as we know, the designation would prohibit any development on the site, and a surplus farm dwelling application would be only considered if it's designated, the land is designated agricultural. And now therefore a change of designation from aggregate resource to agriculture would be necessary prior to considering that consent application. Now, aggregate impact assessment was prepared by Robert Gibson Consulting Services. And the conclusion of that study was that as per the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry's paper, it was concluded that the quality of the aggregate on that site is not good quality, and that would be a tertiary significance instead of secondary and primary and secondary significance. And the Perth County official plan only considers the primary and secondary deposits as a mineral aggregate resources designation, and therefore tertiary deposits would not be included. And that is guided by the Ministry of Natural Resources publication. So there will be no site alteration proposed on the natural resource environment or aggregate designation, as I mentioned, and a notice of publication was circulated on May 1st. As per the requirements of the Planning Act, the application was presented to the Perth East Council for endorsement on June 6th. And a notice of publication was circulated on June 16th for today's council meeting. And can we go to the next slide, please? This application was submitted, was circulated to the agencies and neighboring property owners, along with consent application and the zoning bylaw amendment application, only to the agencies, not the property owners. And both the Perth County Public Works and the Perth East Public Works Department confirmed they support this application and the subsequent for this specific application. Blue Water Recycling Association provided a no comment letter, and Oxford County also provided a no comment letter. With this, I'd like to conclude my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone present who wishes to make a presentation or speak in opposition of the application? Seeing no one, is there anyone present who wishes to make a presentation or speak in support of the application other than the applicant or the applicant's agent? Seeing no one, Does the applicant or the applicant's agent have any comments?
Hello again. You can hear me this time?
Yes, we can.
Oh, perfect. No, I certainly a very thorough and comprehensive presentation. The OPA this morning, again, relates to the removal of mineral aggregate on the small portion of the site. Just want to note that Robert Gibson did prepare the aggregate assessment and concluded that both the area proposed to be removed from mineral aggregate was not suitable nor viable for said use. And the removal and severance of this as a surplus farm severance would not hinder the long-term use of the retained farmland for aggregate, should that be desired in the future by an owner. And certainly any other questions I'd be happy to answer.
Okay, are there any questions from members of council? Seeing no questions, we have a motion that council receives the Perth County Official Plan Amendment number 217 for lands described as Lot 16, Concession 6, 3424, Road 108, Southeast Hope Ward, Township of Perth East, and that council receives comments from the public for consideration regarding Official Plan Amendment number 217 to the County of Perth Official Plan affecting lands described as Lot 16, Concession 6, 3424, Road 108, Southeast Hope Ward, Township of Perth East. Need a mover, moved by Councillor Kassenberg, second by Councillor McKenzie. All those in favor? Carried. Okay. Motion that the planning public meeting be adjourned at 9:32. Moved by Deputy Warden Kellum, Councillor Orr, all in favor? Carried. And that we reconvene, regular council reconvene at approximately 9:32. Moved by Councillor Aitchison, second by Councillor McDermott, all in favor? Carried. Okay, and now we're moving on and we have a delegation, item 8.2.1 for the official plan, OPA 37, and Caroline's going to do that. Is that correct? She left.
Hello, sorry, I apologize. I got moved to panelist and back in, so I apologize for the delay there. So Caroline Baker, Baker Planning Group, busy morning. This morning, this is presenting a list award official plan amendment to permit the expansion of the Van Allen insurance office use in Listowel. I have a brief presentation I'll just share to give some background. Okay, I think that should be up and viewable for you. So as mentioned, the owners, Sarah Van Allen and Shane Van Allen, are the owners of this business, and a team including myself, Grit Engineering and IBI were retained to assist them in their office expansion. Just to give a little bit of context, the site is just under 3,000 square meters in size, which is quite large for the area that it's in. It's located to the southwest of the downtown area of Listowel, surrounded by residential, future office and commercial, public works facility, and an existing trail. The site outlined in red that you can see here was a former place of worship. It was closed, and now for a number of years it has been their insurance business within the existing building. Just two photos of the site opposite climate time. This was in the middle of winter with the snow, but certainly you'll see the conversion of the former place of worship. Probably some perspective on the site, you can see the scale and size of the overall property area in relation to the building. Before you, this is the proposed conceptual site plan. Certainly, if the applications were approved, the owners will go through full site plan approval with North Perth. Essentially, they have about 300 square meters of office space spread over 2 floors. They've outgrown as their business has expanded, and they would like to add about 150 square meters of additional office space to the front of the building. They would also like to improve the overall site access and parking. So they're maintaining the existing driveways from Havelock and Alma, and then repaving, demarcating the parking spaces, ensuring there's accessible parking and access to the building. The overall conceptual design was very intentional in that the new building and expansion be oriented to the street frontages, because there's such a significant setback that's existing and much more significant than the surrounding dwellings. In putting the building expansion to that location, what ends up happening is the rear and side yards to adjacent properties are protected. So all existing vegetation can be maintained, and the setbacks that those residents have in the current situation are maintained. As you may hear later on in your agenda package this morning, the application included a list to award official plan amendment. The site is currently designated residential, which does permit a neighborhood serving commercial uses, of which an office is. This development does meet all of the criteria for a neighborhood commercial use within the residential designation. However, the overall square footage exceeds the current maximum in the official plan. So the intent would be to redesignate to a highway commercial designation, but limit the range of use to just a business and professional office, and also limit the overall floor area to 500 square meters. Even with this increase in building square footage, the site still continues to have a 14% lot coverage. So overall, in relation to the site, it's a fairly reasonable and modest development. There would be a corresponding zoning bylaw amendment application, again, to mimic the official plan, to limit the use and to limit its size. There is a reduced front yard setback because the highway commercial zone does have quite a significant setback in it. So the reduction would be to 7.5. To support the applications, there was a servicing report from Grid Engineering demonstrating suitable services and the ability to address stormwater management. And we submitted a planning justification report that the applications represent good land use planning. It's a centrally located site, provides for the further economic development and expansion of a local business that is compatible with the surrounding land uses, and that the appropriate site functions are available for the use. That does conclude my presentation, so I can stop share and certainly answer any questions, but I appreciate the time and being willing to allow this delegation. Thank you.
Thanks, Caroline. Are there any questions from members of council? Seeing no questions, we have a motion that council receives a delegation for item 8.2.1 OPA 37 from Baker Planning Group. Moved by Councillor Duncan, second by Councillor Aitchison. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, we're going to move on now to staff reports, and the first staff report under the CAO is the Perth County Roadmap, and we have Gary White with us and Sarah Franklin this morning to make that presentation. So.
Good morning, board and council. Before you is a report about the Perth County Roadmap project. To start, roadmaps are a valuable tool, and they display a variety of information in several different ways. This particular map is a representation of the current geographic features and municipal infrastructure in Perth County and the member municipalities. And it is also one of the most frequently requested maps to our department by staff, council, and the lower tiers. It's used in a variety of different ways, including public works, emergency services, and fire services as well. Just a bit of background on this process. We took the 2013 version, which was the last time this map was produced, and did a thorough evaluation of the information that was contained within it. And this was done by the GIS team at Perth County. After looking at it, we did a lot of background work to update data sets in order to ensure that they were accurate and relevant, And then we also set it up in a way so that they are now linked to core data sets within our enterprise data. So future updates to this map are going to be automatic, and it will also be streamlined. So we won't have to do such an intensive process. So setting ourselves up for future success. We anticipate that this batch of maps will be in hand in July. I'm going to turn it over to Sarah now.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you. So on the community engagement and consultation side of things, we wanted to ensure, since it had been 10 years since this map had been updated, that we reached out to the lower tier municipalities to make sure that staff and everybody who uses this map had a chance to have input on this edition. So we'd like to thank everybody for their input, because we received some great comments. Certainly internally at Perth County, we reached out to our management team and particularly our public works team, as they are heavy users of this map as well. And everybody provided excellent input and feedback, and we took that into consideration when we were developing this map. So aside from a project update on this, we are also bringing forward an amendment to the bylaw. So one of the things we discovered, since it's been 10 years since this map had been produced, was that it actually is in the county's fees and charges bylaw. So at the moment, as it stands, our fees and charges bylaw requires us to charge for this map. It requires us to charge the lower tier municipalities for copies of this map for distribution to the public. What we're proposing today is that we amend the current fees and charges bylaw to eliminate that charge. So we are able to bring this product in line with other publications that the county produces that we don't charge for. So that is the amendment that is before you today for consideration, and we'd certainly be happy to answer any questions on this if you may have them.
Okay, questions from council? No questions. Okay, we have a motion that council receives the Perth County Road Map Report and the council amend bylaw 3795-2021 fees and charges to remove the fee charged for the Perth County Road Map. Moved by Councillor Deputy Warden Kellum, Councillor McKenzie, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. Okay, the next one is the Perth County Stewardship Program. So Dean, are you going to give this?
Well, I'll start,
Okay,
Warden, and then I'll pass over to Sarah and Mel Limas. So thank you, Warden, for the opportunity to report on this status of this program. As the chair of the Agricultural Working Group, I've had the pleasure to work with a lot of great people. So I want to thank the fellow councillors that are serving on this committee, as well as our Ag Committee partners at the OFA, Ontario Federation of Agriculture, Christian Farmers Federation of Ontario, and National Farmers Union, as well as county staff, Sarah Franklin, our communications officer, Lori Wolf, our CAO, and Mel Limas, our consultant at Headlands Ag Enviro Solutions. We started February the 1st, I believe, was our first meeting of the Agricultural Working Group, of the first meeting in several years after a long hiatus. So we dove feet first or head first, whichever way you want to say it. We dove right in, and we had a pretty robust discussion in that first meeting. And it was immediately apparent that the focus was to be on a stewardship plan. We had different ideas of what that would look like, but the main result out of that first meeting in February, the committee had a desire to produce some tangible results that we could demonstrate to the public, so that we could show the public the value of what we were doing as a committee and as a county altogether. So what the stewardship program report provides a modest step forward towards that direction. There was considerable discussion at the committee level since February up until this point. The report also outlines that there was numerous public discussion sessions in person as well as online, and also a rigorous public online survey. I can report that the public sessions as well as the online session were very well attended in terms of numbers as public meetings go. And the online survey, there was quite a high level of engagement as well. So overall, like I attended all but one of the meetings. And I can say that I can report back to this council that the mood was very supportive from both the committee members, the public members that attended, and even the lower tier councillors that attended the functions as well. They were all very supportive, and everyone expressed a strong desire to proceed forward with the stewardship program. The mood, they were very encouraged and enthusiastic that the county was showing an interest and a desire to take action with the stewardship program. So I won't go any further right now. I'll turn the floor over to Sarah Franklin and Mel Limas, and they can present their report.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Trentowski. So we have a few slides to share with you. I know Mel and I have done a bit of a roadshow to all of the lower tier councils. So some of this information will be familiar, but we wanted to make sure we gave an overview of the whole project. Tristan, if you want to change the slide. Thank you. So our goal with this program was to develop a stewardship program for Perth County to support projects protecting the soil, water, and air across our region. Community engagement, as you've heard from Councillor Trentowski, was an important part of this project. We wanted to ensure that we were listening to the community to inform this program and make it something that Perth County resonated with. The research and community engagement for this program was heavily front-loaded. We knew we wanted to connect with rural landowners who often are tied up by the spring planting season. And I also want to thank our lower tier municipality partners who helped to share the information online through social media and other means to circulate the information to residents, because we did see quite a great uptake in engagement in this project. The next slide. This is our high-level timeline of the journey we've been on. As Councillor Trentowski mentioned, we started actually a little bit before February, in January, with some initial meetings with Mel, as well as all of the CAOs of Perth County. In February, we reactivated the agricultural working group to have some conversations around the approach, particularly to the rural landowners, to ensure that we were capturing the stakeholder groups and individuals that needed to be spoken to. Mel continued with also one-on-one conversations, and she synthesized the information into the results report that is attached to this report today. We did present back the information that we'd heard in terms of the priorities, because we wanted to ensure that we were listening and we heard everybody accurately. So we did receive some feedback on prioritizing. Thankfully, the majority of those who responded said we sort of were bang on with what had been expressed through respondents to the survey, as well as the in-person community engagement. And we are truly grateful for everybody's input into the project. Next slide. So on the community engagement front, this project proceeded in line with the county's community engagement framework. So both rural and urban residents and stakeholders across the county were connected to this project. This project meets the county's involved level of the framework. And here are just a few ways in which we managed to reach the community. Early on, we set up a project website, which is still live for project updates, and will hopefully become the program home for the stewardship program. Our website was quite a successful venture. We had over 1,000 visits since its inception in early January. Aside from the landing page, as Councillor Trentowski has mentioned, we had a survey, 5 community input sessions, and Mel spent a considerable amount of time in one-on-one telephone conversations, in-person conversations with local stakeholders through the one-on-one interview process. So over 270 people were meaningfully engaged for this project. I'm going to flip it over to Mel now, who's going to carry it from here.
Thanks, Sarah. And thank you all for having me here. I got to meet a number of you during the consultation. So most of you have met me. My family farms in the north part of Perth County and Wellington County. And I also happen to work for the Maitland Conservation Authority and Asabo Bayfield Authority in the past. So both of that meant it was a lot easier to do the consultations, I would say, engaging both the farmers and the conservation authorities. So next slide, please. On top of the community consultation, I did a jurisdictional scan and I looked around the world for ideas on how other jurisdictions have done stewardship. So in that report that you have, it's 13 pages of maybe ideas that would be inspirational in the future, but not necessarily for now. So it was housed with the agricultural working group, but I think it is important to stress that the first things that we heard were that it should involve more than just the rural landowners, but that from the settlement areas as well. Although the agricultural working group was really important to get to have the opportunity to hash out ideas with the county. The commodity groups I also looked at for them, and anyone that I heard feedback that we should approach the Amish and Mennonite communities, so I did that. Feedback that I should approach the service groups, so I did that. And so I think that was pretty robust. I also spent a lot of time with the conservation authorities because this involves them. Next slide, please. So the main thing people said to start small. There's lots of things that we could do when it comes to stewardship, but they said start small with one or two things and knock it out of the park and sort of build the program. The supply and the demand are going to be built at the same time. Don't come out with everything at the same time. So the first priority is tree planting. Most people were really concerned with the low levels of tree cover in the county. But on the other hand, it's important to consider that you have some of the best agricultural land in Ontario, and it's also the most expensive. So, but also you already have a tree cutting bylaw. The delivery method was something to be considered. But there's also tremendous opportunity at the provincial and federal level to access funding, especially like in conjunction. So you could make your contributions to tree planting could be leveraged really well at the federal level. And I thought this was important just to include, so you have it. There is lots of research on windbreaks. And I know it does take land out of production, but it actually really increases the profitability for farmers. So I think that would be a strong way to start is by promoting windbreaks. I just put the details in there with a 12%, 22%, or 16% increase for the 15 times the height of a windbreak. You're looking at, even within 5 years, a $700 increase in profits for a farmer. And then at the full height of a windbreak, it could be almost 7,500. So again, you're taking land out of production, but you're really protecting soil and you're protecting farmers' profitability as well. People were also concerned about the woodlots. The ash trees dying has been a huge concern, and the potential for invasive species like hawthorn to come into a woodlot. So that would be another potential project as part of the trees. And the last that we heard was a centralized point person. It's confusing enough with the boundaries of conservation authorities and lower tier municipalities that having a centralized and streamlined person at the county would be ideal. Even if it was just to connect them with already existing programs with Ontario Soil and Crop Improvement Association, for example. So those were the first priorities out of the bat. Go to the next slide. In the future, there's lots of other things that people said. So in the future, you might look into well decommissioning, composting programs, rain gardens, and the like. Cover crops is always a really popular category with farmers. So this is just to say, in the future, the program could be expanded to several other categories. But to start, we would recommend with trees. Next slide, please. So this is the very beginning of a rollout. Year one, we're already halfway through. And that starts with hiring a stewardship leader and hopefully applying for the 2 billion tree program, which is a federal program to support capacity building for trees. And even doing a soft launch, because there's more than enough appetite, I believe, to start that tree planting program out strong. So year 2, our ask recommendation from the working group is that be $50,000 a year would go towards tree planting. Some of that would include promotion of the program as well. But with that amount of dollars, you could fund it depending on the cost share levels and how the programs roll out, but it could be 8,000 to like 20,000 trees a year that would fund. So then year 3, again, it will always evolve as you're listening to your constituents. So you can continue tree planting, potentially even add more categories. But this was important. In Huron County, they have a water protection steering committee, which is a very large committee. We are suggesting a Perth County stewardship community of practice, which helps create a culture and create the community of practice, I guess, around. It would involve farming groups, environmental groups, and have the opportunity to rub shoulders and create alignment on stewardship in the county. And then consider the tree nursery program. I'll get into that a little later, but we can go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So again, yeah, year 1, the main priority is to get a person hired, and they could be the point person. They would have to do some further development of the program. Again, applying for this capacity building program and doing a soft launch. Next slide. Yeah, year 2 would be continuing to do that. And I'm suggesting, although this could be modified, but that the first categories are windbreak planting, 50% up to $3,000, a block planting on marginal land, 50% up to $3,000, or a tree consultation, 75% up to $500. That could be having a consultant come and look at your woodlot or give recommendations for where to plant windbreaks and what trees to order and all that. I think it's important that it's done right, and you do have some element of consultation, and that it's run through foresters and people that do know trees is important. Next slide, please. So I talked a little bit about the stewardship community of practice. Again, diverse stakeholders. It doesn't need to meet very often to make a big impact on the relationships between various stakeholders. And lastly, consider a tree nursery program. I believe you've been approached about this, and I'm from Wellington County. We do have the Green Legacy program. It is excellent to get tiny little trees, and it's definitely worth looking into. But my recommendation to the working group was that be put on the back burner for a while, that you really start the program out strong with using other nursery stock, which is really strong stock of trees, and then consider doing that in the future. Next slide. I think we're about done. I'll send it back to Sarah.
So just as a summary of the recommendation that's before you, that was run through the agricultural working group. So the recommendation is to reallocate $25,000 in the 2024 budget from the Cultivating Opportunity Grant Program's tree stream into the stewardship program, and then also allocate $25,000 of new funding toward the program for a total of $50,000 to start in 2024. As Mel mentioned, that would not only encompass any grants, but it would also be some money for marketing as well. So that is a summary of the recommendation and some of the research that was done, but we would be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, questions from members of council? Councillor Duncan?
Thank you. One point of contact here at the county, I guess my question would be, where will that position be funded from? I think the success of these programs lies in whether or not we can get money to do projects on the ground. So I'd hate to see our money be swallowed up by administration costs. So I'm just wondering who where is that funding coming from for that person?
Certainly, through the warden, Councillor Duncan, the county has already got approval for a climate change coordinator position. And we've paused the recruitment process for that. We haven't actually started it, with the idea that to hire a stewardship position would sort of connect with that. So it would be somebody responsible for both the climate change initiatives and stewardship. So that position is already set and we're ready to recruit for it. We would just need to incorporate the stewardship activities into their mandate, understanding that, you know, certainly upfront for a program of this nature, that stewardship coordinator side of the role would require a lot of front end work to get this rolling, but that once the template and the intake is developed, that program can continue on sort of a regular cyclical basis. But then the focus may shift to the other climate change actions that are part of the greenhouse gas reduction program. So the two items we felt were closely aligned, and that could be, so rather than hiring an additional individual and trying to, like you said, swallow up the $50,000 by hiring somebody else to manage this, we felt it was closely aligned with the climate change initiatives, and that the two would work well together. So one person responsible for greenhouse gas reduction as well as stewardship.
Okay. Councillor Kasberg?
I do have comments, but perhaps we should wait till the
Oh,
motion
we
is on the
can't hear
floor.
you.
There's just a bit of a delay.
Oh,
I said
there.
I do have comments, but perhaps I should wait until the motion is on the floor to make them.
Okay. Anyone else with questions of the report? Councillor McKenzie?
Yeah, and I hadn't thought of this until I was on my way down here this morning. Certainly, the program that we have right now, we give X number of dollars to the lower tier municipalities through a county grant for trees. And we, in West Perth, we take that money, divvy it out to rural, what's it called? Dane, rural,
Rural roots, one community.
yeah. So we take that money and then divvy it out to groups in our own municipality that wish to plant trees. I guess my question is, how is this going to tie in with that?
Certainly, through the warden. So the goal of the tree planting program that would be centralized would be that organizations and grassroots organizations who've accessed funds through, say, West Perth, for example, would be able to access this program as well. And what it does is it creates a centralized approach so that it's streamlined and there's one program for the entire geography, as opposed to having multiple different application streams, different criteria across the organization. So I don't know, Mel, if you want to speak to some of what we heard on that.
This approach would allow for a lot of flexibility. Even the lower tiers could apply if the lower tier wanted to run the program, for example, or it could be rural routes directly, or the conservation authority, or even a private forester. So there's multiple routes to get there. So I thought that was the best way to make it as flexible as possible.
Supplementary.
Yep, keep going.
So then, the funding that the county provides to the lower tiers, is that still there, or this will take place?
This will take the place.
Okay, other questions, comments? Do you want to make your comment now, Todd, or you want to wait?
Well, if you wish, Warden Eggets, thank you. I can do that. I'm quite concerned actually about the proposition that's before us with regards to a number of issues, and so I'll try to line those up and make sense of them. You know, first, we're talking about increasing the total amount of funds that the county is allocating for the purposes of trees and tree planting. But in fact, you know, of that 50,000 that's now proposed as the budget in the first year, some of it will be spent on program administration and marketing and other activities. So, on the surface of things, we're not spending 50,000, and I think that aligns with Councillor Duncan's question about not getting too bogged down in the administration of this, but actually seeing more trees planted. I think that's all of our goal. We're all, find that of interest, certainly. So I'm a little bit worried that, in a game where we're playing massive catch up based on that 9% coverage of trees in our county, 50,000 less sum for program administration and marketing is anemic. It's just not enough. And so that's my first concern. Secondly, I'm concerned, and I think we got a question about this too, about that sort of conflation between the climate change coordinator, which I voted for in the budget with confidence that we were putting 100% of that person's duties to climate change, and this notion of a stewardship program lead coordinator, whatever we want to call it. And while I appreciate that it sounds like I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth, I'm not. I think that both things need to be done. And I'm not confident, in fact, that watering down the climate change role with stewardship duties in 2023 and 2024, which seems to be the proposition here, is wisdom, especially since, in my opinion, this stewardship initiative is only a narrow part of our action against what really is an existential crisis. Climate change is serious, and we need to take serious actions, as does every person and every entity on our planet at this point. So I do think we need a climate change coordinator who's dedicated to those duties. And those duties, as we understand them, include taking care of climate change lens tools and creating that for our use as a corporation. That includes assisting with public education on fossil fuel reduction. That includes actions to promote energy conservation or generation in municipal property and county buildings. And that includes fleet conversion. And there's more to it than that. The climate change role has a number of things to take care of. So I'm a little worried that we're sort of putting on the back burner the big rocks that go into the jar first in all of this. And so I'm again expressing my concern. I want to talk about Councillor McKenzie's question as well, because I think it's important. Our lower tier municipality in North Perth uses the money that comes from the county grant largely on planting trees in public spaces. And so while we likely can replace that from the tax base and have to put in our own money for that continuing goal and objective, which I think is largely endorsed by North Perth Council, I do note that this money, the 25,000, is being transferred away completely from efforts that we have enjoyed some funds from in the past, and actually in this case, largely to the will of farmers, based on my understanding of the report. And that's not a good or a bad. It's just a comment, an observation. In our case, we have used that money in public spaces and largely in urban areas for purposes of shade creation and more. I also am not sure why the agricultural working group is sort of the lead political entity in steering some of this, and maybe that's a decision that was made for expedience because we had that structure. But climate change and stewardship is an issue from both urban and rural perspectives in our communities, and probably deserves a full lens on that, which I trust my colleagues have taken, but I want to point out that it seems a little odd. I want to also comment on this notion of equitability amongst the lower tiers, and I don't know what that means in this report. Does that mean that you're going to use population-based representation in the allocation of funds to those who apply, or does it mean something else? I don't know the answer to that, so I have a question there. And finally, I want to make sort of some favorable comments too. I don't want to just be meanie here. I do like the idea of a community of practice around stewardship. I think that's brilliant. I do like us investing in a tree nursery program. I think that having that centralized approach will actually move the needle towards moving up that 9%. And I think we all have to move that 9% up in various ways that have been outlined in the reports that we've received. But I do want to conclude with this notion. We cannot plant our way out of climate change unless we were to propose planting every square meter on the surface of the earth. And so there are other things that must be done. And the stewardship piece is one piece of a big puzzle, and that big puzzle needs our urgent attention. And that's my opinion. And so for that reason, and for the things that I've raised, I don't think this work is done yet. And I would rather defer this move and with some more study than proceed to approve it at this time.
Okay, other comments or questions? Councillor Kunkus?
No, I'll defer to Councillor McDermott first. No, go ahead, Hugh. Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, but on the part that it was the Ag Committee, it might have been the Ag Committee, but I'm sure the very beginning, we talked about it for everybody. Like, this is not just for farmers, this is for everybody in town for a program. And I think being part of climate change, planting trees is part of it. So I think that dovetailing in with that person looking after everything is a way to go, and it'll actually save us a lot of money. And so if you might be great to start big, but for a county that's $927,000 behind the 8 ball, I think 50 grand is a good way to start, because unless you get the program right, you're just wasting your money and your time, and people's time and money are valuable. So I would just make those comments.
Okay, we're going to go to Councillor Aitchison.
Okay, well, I thought it was a great presentation. I was part of that Ag Working Group. I think it's a great way to start. I use the word to start. I sort of agree with Councillor Kassenberg's comments, but I don't. Planting trees is one of your most effective, quick solutions to reducing gas problems in the air. So yeah, it may not seem like much, but it's a heck of a good start. And he mentioned there once about, well, we'd have to plant every square inch with trees in the global world to have any effect. Well, that's not true. I read an article the other day in the Corn Belt in the US, because of all the corn grown, it actually acts as air conditioning, because the corn sucks up so much carbon out of the air, it reduces the temperatures. And that's no different than southwestern Ontario or Perth South, North Perth, anywhere around here. You grow a good crop of corn, and it grows 200 bushels, it sucks tons and tons of carbon out of the air as it's developing. Okay, you may not get that in the wintertime, but you certainly get it in summer. Yes, we do have to make a strong effort. Climate change it's real. And I wouldn't have said that a few years ago, but I certainly would not. I think I told that to Mel one day. Anyway, we can do our best here in this little area to try and improve this. But Todd also mentioned this is a global problem. And I don't see China or the US or India doing anything too substantial to stop this problem. So it is going to take a global effort, but it's not just here. And I made a comment, I think it was the last council meeting. You know, we have to reduce fossil fuel, and I agree 100%. Except for we haven't gone very far on electric plug-in stations yet, have we? And now there's a plan works. We're not a fraction of the way where we should be on that. I'm going to be honest with it. Like, I live on one of the busiest roads in the county, other than maybe line 86. And you couldn't even pull up my driveway in the weekend for vehicles heading to the lake. and then heading home again, and then heading to the lake, and heading home again. But what I was seeing, my God, there's a lot more electric vehicles on, like a lot more. And I think, and I could be wrong, I think it's by 2030. Fossil fuel cars are basically gonna be very limited still. I think that's the year, somebody can correct me if I'm wrong. So in 7 years, you gotta have charging stations everywhere, and we're nowhere near getting there. Just some comments.
Okay, Counselor Jankowski.
No, thank you, Warden, through you. So as chair of the committee, I'll repeat what I mentioned earlier. I've attended all but one of the sessions. The message was consistent and it was clear that the participants in the meetings were very supportive and they wished a desire to proceed. They did not ask for further study. They wanted to see action. The committee members at our first meeting were clear. They wanted to see action. They wanted to be able to demonstrate to the public that A, we recognize the need for land stewardship. B, we're willing to take the steps necessary. C, we want to demonstrate what actions we're taking to the public and show them the value of what we're doing. In response to Councillor Kasenberg's question, why the Ag Working Group? I don't know exactly. I'm new to this council. I'm new to this committee. But what I can tell you is that the ag community, being the largest land stakeholders in the county, recognize the need for land stewardship because that's what they do every day. That's their livelihood. So it was pretty clear from the outset that this was something that needed to be the bull taken by the horns and initiative taken by the group. And that's what we've done. And further, I also sit on the Upper Thames River Conservation Authority as on the board of directors as a member for representing West Perth. The watershed report card says that no further study is required. Action is necessary. And it behooves us to at least start with something small, albeit a very small rock in the jar, but it's one rock to be followed, as Councillor Aitchison has said, by other rocks. And as Mel Limas has pointed out in her submission, there are other things to follow. This is something that we can start small, build the momentum, gain the public trust, gain the public interest, and proceed forwards to the other things that Councillor Kasenberg is concerned about. But it starts with one, and this is the one that we picked. That's those are my comments to try and assuage the concerns and the fears of the council that we might be going in the wrong direction. It may not be the perfect direction, but at least we're going forward with something, and we're asking council support and the public support to help us get started. Once we get started, the path will become much clearer as to figuring out the mechanics of the equity, figuring out the mechanics of how to run the program. But if we don't start it, we're never going to figure out the rest of those questions. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else with comments or questions? So I do have a motion and I'll read it and we'll see where it goes. And if you want something different, we'll do it then. Council receives the Perth County Stewardship Program report and that council approves the Perth County Stewardship Program as presented. And that council reallocate the $25,000 of funding from the Cultivating Opportunity Grant Program, tree planting stream to the stewardship program. And that council directs staff to include an additional $25,000 allocation in the 2024 budget for the stewardship program for a total of $50,000 in 2024. Moved by Councillor Aitchison, second by Councillor Jankowski. Comments, Councillor Duncan.
Just a question. Where are we at with the coordinator position? How long will we be hiring this person to put them in place to get this going?
Through the warden, we can commence recruitment nearly immediately. We have a draft mandate set out with climate change in mind, but we can add in some stewardship items to their mandate for the recruitment purposes. Mel has kindly, through her research, provided a lot of that information. So we can work with county HR to get that mandate ready to go, polished up and posted as quickly as possible. Typical recruitment posting time is a minimum of 2 weeks. So we can go from there once the posting is live.
Okay, Councillor Casson, oh, sorry, Doug.
One supplemental quick.
Yeah.
How much of that person's time will then be allocated to the stewardship portion? As opposed to climate change, you know, even just, let's say for the first year.
Through the warden, I'm not sure I could necessarily off the cuff create a split for you. I will also note that this stewardship program itself is an outcome from the Greenhouse Gas and Climate Change Initiative. So this would have been in some ways, part of the role of the climate change coordinator in some function anyways. So I foresee a lot of front end development work that'll need to take place. But once that intake process is developed, it will be rolling. So I'm not sure, Mel, if you have any other comments on a division of time that you could foresee given what you know. Yeah. It's a bit of a tough question to answer.
50% for the first 2 months, then down to maybe 20 or 30, perhaps. Completely.
Okay, Councillor Kassenberg.
Well, I would like to try an amendment, actually. I'd like to try to amend that motion by removing the third bullet, which is the reallocation of the funds, and adjusting the fourth bullet so that council actually puts real skin in the game and directs that in the 2024 budget year that we allocate $50,000 directly, as opposed to moving the 25,000 out of the municipal grant program.
So you're saying to leave the 25,000 in the grant program and have an additional?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, so Todd's making an amendment. Do we have a seconder for that? Do we have a seconder for that? Second by Councillor Duncan. Just give Tyler a second here and then he's going to read it all back, not me. We're sure going to do the amendment.
I asked a question with Tyler's figuring this out. Do you want to leave the 25 in the original portion for the lower tiers? Is the lower tier going to administer that?
Well, if it's left there, Jim,
I'm just asking. I
would assume that
Let's be clear up front here.
it would be actually same as what has happened and the other.
I'll be honest with you, at the beginning, I thought I should offer the lower tiers and let them administer. Correct? That's what I said. And then we said, no, you need 1 point person for the whole thing. And so I agreed. Like I persuaded to go with the 1 point person.
We had discussions at the Ag Committee how it would be administered and that we didn't really come out with a conclusion. And we felt that when the administrator would come on board.
Because we didn't have any approvals yet.
No, but we didn't have any recommendations and we thought we'd see when the person was hired, then a more discussion would be how that the money was allocated. Councillor Duncan?
So just to be clear, that would mean we would have $75,000 in the budget allocated to tree planting activities for 2024.
If this amendment is passed.
Passed.
Can we turn the heat up in here? I am.
You're freezing.
Please. I had to put my sock.
You need to get up and move around for a few.
Yeah, we're going to soon here.
Should raise it.
Okay, are we ready for the amendment? Tyler.
So through the warden, if I understand correctly, Councillor Kassenberg, and correct me if I am incorrect on this, is the removal of the third bullet point and then just modification of that fourth bullet point to 50,000. So the amendment would read that council receives the Perth County Stewardship Program report, and that council approves the Perth County Stewardship Program as presented. And that council directs staff to include a $50,000 allocation in the 2024 budget for the stewardship program.
Okay, Deputy Warden Kellum.
But one source or two source? Lower tier and the county? You're looking at. I thought we wanted one source.
The committee recommendation was one source. Avoid duplication and to avoid confusion. And to provide a cleaner more simplified mode of delivery. That was the conclusion that the committee came to. Yes, we had considerable discussion, but we wanted to keep it simple, straightforward, and not get too prescriptive on the details until the administrator was in place. And at that time, we could become more prescriptive on the details. And as far as the equity of the program in terms of the disbursement of funds, the committee was going to oversee that disbursement for the first year to ensure that the proper checks and balances were in the system to get the program started off on the right foot. That's my recollection of our discussion at committee before we came up with this recommendation to council.
Okay, Councillor Duncan.
Okay, I want to be clear on what I'm seconding here. So what we're saying is we're going to allocate $50,000 in the 2024 budget. There'll also be still $25,000 left in the budget for the original money that went to the lower tiers. That $25,000, we can discuss that at 2024 budget time. If we want to remove that or reallocate that budget time, we can do that. Right now, if I'm clear, we're going to put $50,000 of the county's money into the stewardship program for 2024. Is that what we're saying?
So through the warden, that would be correct. The 25,000 from cultivating opportunity tree grant program would remain. 50,000 would be the change that Councilor Kasenberg has suggested. And I believe that's okay with the way that I read that out, Councilor Kasenberg?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, at the present time, we are allocating 25,000 to the Cultivating Opportunity Tree Grant Program, and that won't change unless there's a will of council to do that. So the effect of this motion is to say, we're not dealing with that because it's already in place. What we're dealing with is putting real money into the tree program, and 50,000 is not real money against the mountain that we have to climb. But to Councillor Trentowski's earlier point, it's a start.
Okay, any more questions? If not, we're going to vote on the amendment. Is everyone clear on what the amendment is? Okay, all those in favor of the amendment? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8. Those opposed? 2, 4, 6, 7. And it's defeated. Okay, so then we go back to the original motion. I'm correct that we reallocate 25,000 from the Cultivating Opportunity Grant Tree Planting Stream, and we direct staff to include an additional 25 in the 2024 budget for a total of 50,000. Councillor Aitchison.
I move that. Can I make a slight amendment? I'm going to amend. We make that a total of 75,000. We started at 50 because we weren't sure we'd get support for that. I think there is support for a higher figure than that. So I'd like to see it move to 75 in total instead of just 50.
So you're saying that an additional 50 to make a total of 75.
Correct.
Councillor Trentowski, second that.
I'm good with that. Yes, I'm good with that.
Okay, comments, questions? Okay, Tyler, go for it.
All right, so through the order that council receives the Perth County Stewardship Program report, and that council approves the Perth County Stewardship Program as presented, and that council reallocate the 25,000 of funding from the Cultivating Opportunity Grant Program, Tree Planting Stream to the Stewardship Program, and that council directs staff to include an additional 50,000 allocation in the 2024 budget for Stewardship Program for a total of 75,000 in 2024.
Okay. This is an amendment, right? I got my head on straight here. Okay, all in favor of the amendment? Opposed? Carried. Now, do we vote again on the original motion? Because he made an amendment to the.
I think he's changed my original motion because I made it. I asked for the change.
We made a modification to
Okay.
the original motion.
Okay.
Dean had seconded it.
Okay.
So he seconded what I wanted to change.
All right, so as long as we're all good.
I think we're good on one motion,
Okay,
but I'm not a clerk.
We had the same mover and seconder as the first original motion, so we can accept that.
Okay, good. We're gonna have a break. Thanks. Okay, we're back, and the next item of business on our agenda is under planning services. The first item is 8.2.1, list to award official plan amendment number 37 at 622 Elma Street, Listowel. And we have John for that, and John, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Warden Eggets and members of council. We're just gonna wait for here it is. Just a quick explanation on why I'm here talking now rather than earlier in the council meeting is the public meeting for this OPA happened at North Perth on June 19th. Bringing this forward today for recommendation as it's a listable award official plan amendment and not a county Perth official plan amendment. Carolyn Baker of Baker Planning Group just gave a delegation also that you all heard for this property. So I'll try my best not to kind of reiterate too much of her delegation, but as such, we'll get into this. So the property is 622 Elma Street. It is owned by SSVA or Sarah and Shane Van Allen for Van Allen Insurance. The property is in between Main Street and it's also south of Main Street and south of Elm Street there on the red star. Next slide, please. So as Carolyn alluded to, the property or the dwelling on the property was initially a church and it was repurposed to be the insurance office. The owners of the property would like to enlarge this office space, hence the need to change from the residential official plan designation in the listable award official plan to a highway commercial designation. In addition, the site-specific policies required for this highway commercial designation include the cap of the maximum or area of the permitted use at 500 meters squared and capping the permitted uses on the property to only a business and professional office. The proposed developments will consist entirely of professional office space and will not include any sort of dwelling units. Next slide, please. So the subject lands, like I had alluded to, are designated residential. This residential designation does allow for neighborhood commercial uses. The caveat behind that is that the neighborhood commercial uses are capped at 200 meters squared. And the proposed addition to the insurance business would create a larger surface, a larger ground floor area, than the requirement in the listable award official plan, hence the need for an OPA. We can go to the next slide, sorry. So when a commercial development grows beyond its neighborhood commercial use, the commercial uses that are permitted in the listable award official plan are two land use designations, which are highway commercial and central commercial. And these two were assessed by the applicant's planner to determine which would be best to change to from the residential designation. So a highway commercial designation is being pursued here. The subject lands are close to downtown and adjacent to low density residential uses. The applicant's planner is proposing to limit the range of permitted uses to only the business and professional office, cap it at 500 meters squared. So restricting the permitted uses to a business and professional office only addresses some compatibility concerns in the neighborhood, which would be presented by introducing a new highway commercial designation in a predominantly low density residential neighborhood. Business and professional offices are permitted in the highway commercial designation. And when deciding on whether a proposal is more fitting with a highway commercial designation or the central commercial designation, some parameters need to be assessed, which include the property's physical characteristics, building size, lot shape, parking requirements, and things like that. And these were all evaluated by Carolyn Baker. So the subject lands are approximately 0.66 acres. And this size is substantially greater than the surrounding residential low density parcels in the area. And this is because the property used to be a church. This large size helps to accommodate servicing, off-street parking, landscaping and buffering from the neighborhood residents to the south. And these physical characteristics of the site are more in keeping with a traditional highway commercial designation rather than a more compact central commercial designation. Next slide, please. So the applicants also submitted a functional servicing report, which indicated that the property is currently serviced. BM Ross, the municipality's commenting engineers, have indicated that the site plan process can handle matters pertaining to stormwater management. And as Carolyn had alluded to as well, barring the approval of the official plan, there's also a zoning bylaw amendment in place, which also had its public meeting on June 19th. So that zoning bylaw amendment would also need to be approved. And additionally, after that, there is a site plan approval process that the applicants will need to go through. Next slide, please. So notice of application was circulated on May 10th, notice of public meeting on May 30th. There was one comment from a neighbor who has no objections to the proposal. MVCA also has no concerns with this file. The public meeting took place on June 19th and no additional comments were received by members of the public at that time. Next slide, please. So staff recommend that Perth County Council approve OPA number 37. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, John. Any questions of the presentation or comments? Nope. Okay, we have a motion that council receive the Listo Award official plan amendment number 37-SSBA report for lands described as part lot 17 and lot 25 plan 185 Listo Award municipality of North Perth, and that council approved Listo Award official plan amendment number 37 to expand an existing insurance business affecting lands described as part lot 17 and lot 25 plan 185 Listo Award municipality of North Perth. Moved by Councillor Kasselberg, second by Deputy Warden Kellum. Any more comments, questions? All in favor? Carried. Okay, thanks, John. The next item on our agenda is OPA 217. It's the application of Todd and Alice Steinman, and Pune is going to join us with the presentation.
It's so I keep repeating myself, but I'm really summarizing the content that was presented at the public meeting. So there are three designations on the subject site: natural resource environment, agriculture, and primary and secondary aggregate resource. And that is for the property at 3424 Road 108A. The purpose of the application is to redesignate the land from primary and secondary resource, a portion of it from that designation to agriculture. It's 0.8 hectare of land. And the reason is that the applicant would want to go to surplus farm dwelling severance application. And through the study that we received, it was demonstrated that the land, the significance of the gravel and sand on the land is tertiary and it's not primary and secondary. Based on the study and also the planning policies, the staff considers this application as appropriate and recommends approval for this application.
Okay, any questions or comments of the report? Seeing none, we have a motion that council receive the Perth County official plan amendment number 217, Todd and Alice Steinman report for lands described as lot 16, concession 6, 3424 Road 108, Southeast Hope Ward, Township of Perth East, and that council approved the official plan amendment number 217 to the County of Perth official plan affecting lands described as lot 16, concession 6, 3424 Road 108, Southeast Hope Ward Township of Perth East. Moved by Councillor Orr, second by Councillor McDermott. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, thanks, Pune. And the third item on our agenda for planning is the Perth County comments on proposed provincial policy statement. And Susanna is going to join us. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Board Nuggets. Good morning, Council. So Council has received reports with regards to the draft provincial policy statement on both May 18th and June 1st from the former manager of planning, Sally McMullen. And you've had good conversations about at those two council meetings. At the most recent council meeting, June 1st, Council directed that the comments for the proposed policy provincial planning statement be brought back to July 6th. So I'm here today with the comments for your consideration. And I have a few slides to review the draft letter to the province regarding the provincial planning statement that has been circulated for comments. So if you could continue to the next slide, please. The province released Bill 97, which was amendment to the Planning Act, and also the proposed provincial planning statement on April 6th. And then subsequently, and again, Council discussed both Bill 97 and the proposed PPS at the May 18th county council meetings. And then subsequently, Bill 97 received royal assent. So those were the amendments to the Planning Act on June 8th. Then the province released the natural heritage policies in the provincial planning on June 16th. And now the commenting period for the draft provincial planning statement closes on August the 4th. So the next slide, please. So the letter that was in your package and that you had a good discussion about at the June 1st County Council meeting included comments with regards to the Bill 97 amendments. And those have been removed as the Bill 97 amendments to the Planning Act has now received royal assent. So those were comments with regards to the minister expressing concerns with regards to the province's jurisdiction for ministerial zoning orders and an expression of support for the additional residential units. So because Bill 97 has received royal assent, those changes to the Planning Act are now in effect. The Planning Act includes the changes that were being discussed or that the province was inviting comments for through Bill 97. So those comments have been removed from the letter to the province in your package today. If we move to the next slide. So with regards to the draft provincial planning statement, the following comments are with regards to the draft PPS. So the next slide, please. So on June 1st, the letter that was in council's package was included a request that the natural heritage policies be provided for comments, as the County of Perth has put a substantial effort into consulting with regards to the natural environment policies in the draft official plan. And they were subsequently released. And I have reviewed them. They were released on June 16th and they are largely unchanged. So I'm not recommending that council provide any further comments to the province with regards to the natural heritage policies. And then, sorry, the next slide, please. And so then there are 3 comments which Sally McMullen reviewed with you on June 1st. So first, with regards to affordability as it refers to housing. So there is a change in the draft provincial planning statement with regards to how affordable housing is being contextualized and the municipality's responsibilities. In the 2020 PPS, which is the PPS that we are working underneath now, it refers to affordable housing targets. and that the planning authority shall establish affordable housing targets. So the reference to affordable housing and to affordable housing targets have been removed from the draft provincial planning statement. And the language now refers to housing options and states that the planning authorities will present and facilitate all housing options. So the comments that are in the letter drafted to the province ask for clarification with regards to how the new language, the new approach to housing options. So this refers to different types and different ownership models. What tools will we have available both provincial, and what tools can the province help the municipality, the county with in order to implement this policy direction? So that's the first comment. The second, then if we go to the next slide, please, is with regards to lot creations on farms. And I know that Sally McMullen had a good conversation with council at the May 18th meeting with regards to the direction in the draft provincial planning statement for lot creation for residential lots in an agricultural designation. The draft provincial planning statement includes the permission for 3 residential lots and also includes a policy that official plans may not be more restrictive, so that the county wouldn't have, if the policies are approved as drafted, the county wouldn't have the opportunity to reduce that policy direction, to not allow residential lot creation. And I know that the warden and council have been involved with conversations with the province. There has been significant conversations between the agricultural community and the province with regards to this and the concern that it raises for the long-term viability of livestock agriculture in Perth County and in Ontario. And we have heard anecdotally that there is movement on this, that the province is listening to the comments, and Warden might be able to offer, perhaps you have other comments to offer. That said, the policies continue to be in the draft PPS, and comments have been included in the letter to speak to that and request that those policies be removed. Then the final area that the comments are proposed on the next slide, please, is with regards to the change and removal of comprehensive review requirements. So through the development of the official plan, you have received a number of presentations over the last 4 years with regards to the comprehensive review requirements. And this is used in order to both evaluate what the projected growth is in our settlement areas over the next 25 years, determine how much land is required in order to satisfy those growth needs. So that has been removed. It's not in the draft PPS. There are a number of other policy requirements that are important for considering growth expansions. And the comments that the department has prepared don't express concern with regards to the removal of the comprehensive review. We also believe that assigning growth to the established settlement areas is much preferred to allowing the residential lot creation in the agricultural areas. Those are the 3 comments that are in the letter in your package. I know you've had good discussion to date, and if I can help further, I'm certainly available.
Okay, thank you. Any comments or questions? Councillor Katzenberg?
Yeah, just quickly, Susanna, if you can help me out. Let's go back to that slide that you had about comprehensive review and the changes there. What are the implications of like you talked about that sort of growth in adjacent sort of urban areas, loosely, I want to say, but like where does this meet reality? Like, can we expand urban areas without comprehensive reviews, for example?
Go ahead. Through you, Warden, with the draft PPS, removes the comprehensive review. So the comprehensive review is significantly informing the work on the official plan at present. And at present, we continue to work under the direction of the 2020 PPS. Going forward, if there are proposed settlement boundary expansions, if under the direction offered by the draft PPS, a comprehensive review would not be required by a developer. Does that assist?
You're muted. Todd.
Oh, I think so. I expressed some mild concern about that, but because we could have lots of developers showing up at the table saying, let's expand the settlement boundaries because I want to build here.
That would be, there would be the opportunity for the planning department to offer comments to council, the local municipalities with regards to the need for expansion, and a comprehensive review would not be required. So a comprehensive review is a specific study requirement that determines what the population projections will be and demonstrates that there's a need for additional land. It is a useful planning tool. It has been very helpful in guiding the amount of designated lands that are required. And it is in the current PPS, it is a specific requirement for any expansion to a settlement area. So if a developer is proposing an expansion to a settlement area, one of the study requirements through the direction of the PPS is a comprehensive review. So given the direction that the province is heading with the PPS, we don't have concerns with the removal of that study. And we prefer, the planning department has a strong preference for directing new development to settlement areas as opposed to permitting non-farm residential lot creation in the agricultural area. So, and there are a number of tests that remain in the draft PPS, and those include the consideration of adequate servicing, phase progression of urban development, and the impact on agriculture, including minimum distance separation through an agricultural impact assessment. So it may not be the case that if a comprehensive review study is removed, that it would be possible. It may be the case that the department might not be able to support a proposed settlement area expansion if there is a good quantity of land available. And it makes the consideration of a settlement area expansive less onerous for the developer. Okay.
Just one sort of, I just want to test one assumption. So thank you for clarifying that there are still some bases for the planning department to say on a given application, no, this isn't fitting. There's still some criteria that are missed. But you talked about that sort of need for population growth and that being sort of a justification that a developer could bring forward. Do you foresee the potential of a he said, she said kind of thing where the developer says there's pressure and we need to build more homes, and the planning department says we don't see that pressure, and you're locked in a sort of fight with each other?
Well, I mean, these are important questions. I think without a specific file, it's challenging to answer specifically. But I can't, from time to time, there are situations where there may be an adjustment to a settlement area proposed, where the existing designation doesn't include, an area that would round out a settlement area boundary. And at that point, we're not imagining a residential subdivision, but maybe it allows for the creation of perhaps 1 to 5 lots. And that the department is obligated through the PPS at that point to require a comprehensive review because it's an expansion to a settlement area boundary. So this would remove the requirement for those types of settlement area boundaries. The other, yeah, does that help? So I don't like, I would need to spend more time with the draft policies in order to answer specific questions with regards to larger expansions. And my thinking is that through the work of the new official plan, we will have done a comprehensive review of the lands available in the settlement areas in Perth County, and done a very thorough review of how much with the studies that have been provided with Watson and Associates, and the comprehensive reviews and the land needs reviews. We will have done a very thorough job of determining or projecting how much land is required for 25 years. So it may be the case that it may be difficult for a developer to, because of the timing of the work of the new OP in Perth County, I guess. You know, like every municipality, every county, every region will be at a slightly different point in the review of their official plan. And because in Perth County, we are just completing or just getting to the point of considering the new official plan at this time that the provincial policy statement is changing. Council is in the position where we have just completed this very thorough review of how much land is required for a 25-year projection. So it may be the case that the development community simply isn't even contemplating OPAs for settlement area expansions, because that, you know, we're imagining that will be complete in 2024. Does that help?
Okay, anyone else comments or questions? Okay, then we have a motion that council receives the Perth County comments on proposed provincial policy statement, ERO number 019-6813 report, and that council directs staff to submit the attached letter to ERO posting number 019-6813 prior August 4th, 2023. Need a mover and a seconder, moved by Councillor Tunkowski, second by Councillor McDermott. All in favor? Carried. Okay, thanks, Susanna. We're going to move to corporate services now, and the first item is the May 23 forestry inspection report, and I believe Tyler's going to do this.
Perfect. Through the warden, before council is the May 2023 forestry inspectors report provided by Marvin Smith, the forestry for the county. Marvin completed 3 inspections in response under the submission of notice of intent or NOI, and 4 inspections in response to a request from landowner. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to pass those on.
Any questions on the report? Councillor Aitchison?
Maybe somebody should notify Marvin that I'm not the warden anymore. I read the top of that report. Hey, come on. That's fine. But if he wants to comment, that's fine. No, I just read that and I went, yeah, oh, shit, that's the warden.
Okay. So we have a motion that council receives the May 2023 forestry inspectors report for information. Moved by Councillor Orr, second by Councillor McDermott. All in favor? Carried. And the next one is the multifunctional device renewal agreement, and I believe Randy's going to do that.
Good morning, Warden and County Council. Through the Warden, I'd like to highlight a few of the key points from the multifunction device renewal agreement that was presented for information. As noted, Perth County staff have investigated the lease renewal, the multifunction device fleet with Xerox Canada. Perth County will leverage the current Ontario Education Collaborative Marketplace program that is available to the Ontario broader public sector to realize a savings of approximately $6,200 per year or $31,000 over a 5-year term. Savings are being realized from discounts on the lease and cost per copy on 6 large photocopier printer units and 3 mid-sized units across Perth County facilities. There's further background information in the report. I'm available to answer any questions or comments you may have. Thank you.
Okay, questions for Randy? No questions, and we have a motion that council receives a report titled MFD Renewal Agreement for Information. Moved by Councilor McKenzie, second by Councilor Orr, all in favor? Carried. Okay, we're going to go to 2022 financial results and year-end transfers. Corey?
Thank you, Warren Nuggets and Council. In front of you is the 2022 financial results for the county of Perth. This is to look at the actual calculated balance against budget for 2022 and to determine the overall surplus or deficit. The audit of the financial statements are still ongoing, but the staff has determined that 2022's deficit of the county is just over $900,000. Within the reports, it identifies the areas of those deficits, and significantly, the deficit is related to winter maintenance reserve, about $900,000 in that deficit for the reserve. Sorry, in winter maintenance itself, not the reserve. We'll talk about the reserve later. But overall, we are in a deficit of about $914,000. Significantly is in winter maintenance program. It was identified in 2022 that we were essentially in a deficit position, but with our further results, it was higher than what we anticipated back in December of 2022. This winter maintenance deficit will be funded from the remaining balance of the winter maintenance reserve, which is about $348,000, with additional monies to be coming from what we were allocating for capital to offset in the operations from the regional roads. It is noted that we're still on track for winter maintenance for 2023, projecting about be 2% over budget. But what we're going to be in 2023, the reserve was essentially going to be zero. So we'll need to take a good look at what we're going to be looking at for our 2024 budget. The other identified deficits and surpluses are there for your gander. And if there's any specific questions within the report, I'll be happy to answer them.
Okay, questions of the report? Councilor Aitchison?
So I'm looking at these numbers. And yeah, there was a big thing for winter maintenance, but actually there was about 60% of our deficit in roads was construction. And a lot of that was drainage costs. And I understand you have absolutely no control over that. But how close are we going to be on maybe that portion this year? Any idea? Because I know we've always said you should allocate more for drainage, but our construction costs maybe didn't come in as bad as we anticipated. Like, are we going to be ballpark close?
Through the warden to Councilor Aitchison, in 2023's budget, Public Works had significantly increased the amount of ditching and drainage work to deal with the impacted over budget of that line item for 2023. Until the essentially end of the year, we will not know from the lower tiers particular drainage work that will impact the county of Perth.
So we've had significant discussion at First South Council over amounts apportioned to road crossings or allowances, thinking like we're just taking 6 ways to the cleaners on these. And I'm sure John McClellan would agree with me on that, because I look at the cost of going across 130 that drain. It's like, maybe we should have just dug the road up, because the road's going to need doing in a year or two anyway. That underground bore ended up being so significant, it wasn't funny. Like, maybe we have to take a new look at doing things. I guess is part of my point here.
Okay, John?
Through you, Warden, I would concur. Like, we don't have much control over that, those drainage assessments, and I think as Treasurer Bridges has indicated, that falls within our operating budget under our drainage area there. Typically, we budget. It's typically cyclical in nature, or historically cyclical in nature with those drainage assessments. But I know over the last three years or so, we've seen some significant drainage improvements on the municipal drain system, which have resulted in much higher numbers there within that operating budget. We're also seeing significant increases in costs to do the work, as you just mentioned. And typically with those road projects, and with the drainage work, we take a look to see if we can take care of any of that work in-house to maybe control some of those costs and or the type of work being done. So those are things we're just trying to get a better handle on. I can tell you I have received some invoices for municipal drain assessments in 2023, which have kind of taken my breath away, and thank God we increased the budget this year. So
It's got one more further comment through the warden. You better keep budgeting that higher and higher, because what you're seeing now, and this is partial what we discussed earlier on climate change. You're seeing more significant rainfall events. Farmers now, they want those fields draining today, not a week from today. That's why you're getting multiple requests for drainage work to improve outlets that were put in based on 25-year ago rainfalls that don't cut it anymore. Anyway.
Okay, Councillor. Oh, sorry, John. Go ahead.
Through you, Warden. I think the bigger thing that we're seeing and that's impacting these municipal drains is, certainly we may be not receiving the number of rainfall events, but the intensity of those rainfall events has escalated, and that's what's causing some of these problems, and then the improvements to the municipal drain system.
Got a couple more coming to you first, so too, just so
I'm aware.
Okay, Councillor Castleberg.
Thanks. I did want to sort of echo Councillor Acheson's comments. I think that we're going to see more and more of this, and that's something worth us taking note of. I took note in the report, and I asked the operations team to sort of confirm this, that come the end of 23, we're going to feel some pain around winter maintenance, especially if recent patterns of being over are any indication. That it appears that we've sort of removed the funds from our buffer account to try to minimize those shocks, and now we're going to have to start putting more money in, either directly into the operations line or in to sort of rebuild that reserve. Have I got that right?
Through the warden to Councillor Kasemer, that is correct. That will be a 2024 pressure, as indicated by Councillor Aitchison as well. The drainage assessment item is another pressure within just the roads division that will impact us into 2024 budgeting. So as we move along and started to talk budget visioning for 2024, these items will come back again.
Okay, any other comments or questions? If not, we have a motion that council receives the 2022 financial results and year-end transfers report, and that Perth County Council approves effective December 31, 2022, the following reserve transfers. Excuse me. Number one, 92,650 transferred to the levy stabilization reserve. Number two, 81,435 transfer from the paramedic services WSIB reserve. And number three, 348,169 transfer from winter maintenance reserve. Need a mover and a seconder, moved by Councillor Duncan, second by Councillor McDermott. All in favor? Carried. Okay, we're going to move to paramedic services, and we have the first item, vehicle replacement 2024. Mike, floor is yours.
Thanks. And through the warden, similar to the last 2 years, that we've come early for a vehicle purchase the following year, because the length of time it takes now to build a vehicle is typically up to a year. Although we do understand that chassis are more available, so that is decreasing. We still are preemptively addressing this now so that not the process. And so this year, we are still in a situation where there's one manufacturer that produces two different brands of ambulances, Crestline and Demers. And so we're in a situation where we are once again looking to purchase 3 ambulances this year. They are not additions to fleet, they are replacements. And we replace ambulances, as a reminder, every 7 years. And typically when they reach 275,000 or plus kilometers, and these will all be over 300,000 kilometers by the time they're replaced, or they are right now. There is another increase in the prices of ambulances this year. And so we are looking at a total project estimate of around 840,000 for 3 ambulances. That includes everything bumper to bumper, and we do some modification work once they arrive on site because it's cheaper for us to do it that way. But at the end of the day, that's what we'd be looking at. And you'll see in the report that there is an increase of $21,500 estimated per unit over last year's prices for our ambulances. And one of the things that we have been advocating and working on as an association of paramedic chiefs, but also here in Perth County, is trying to work with the provincial government as well as with manufacturers to see if we can get some competition in the market. My understanding is there's a manufacturer out of the US called Wheel Coach that will be certifying an ambulance, but we'll be looking at that. That process would not take place prior to us making this order. That would be probably for the next year. So there is a possibility when I come to you next year that we'll be looking at doing an RFP as opposed to a sole source, which we are doing this year because there is only one manufacturer that will meet the standards. So with that in mind, that is my report, and I'm happy to go back to you, Warden, for questions.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from council? No? Okay, we have a motion that council receive the report entitled Paramedic Services Vehicle Replacements 2024, and that staff be authorized to issue a purchase order during 2023 to replace 3 ambulances as scheduled to be replaced during 2024. Need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Orr, second by Councillor Aitchison. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, thanks, Mike. We're going to go to Public Works, and we're pre-budget approval and procurement of winter maintenance vehicles and equipment. John?
Thank you, Warden Eggets. Good morning, Council. This report kind of dovetails nicely with the Chief Adair's report here. We are also looking to receive pre-budget approval for the procurement of a triaxle snowplow and inform Council of details of another snowplow asset. Similar to the ambulance fleet, there are market conditions that are creating difficulties in the procurement and timely delivery of these critical fleet assets. Some of those difficulties are outlined in the report and were also noted back in 2021 when we last procured a plow truck. Similar to the 2021 purchase, we are recommending that Council authorize staff to procure the asset through single source or direct negotiation in accordance with the county's procurement policy. Staff have been in contact with Viking Sieves, who have manufactured and outfitted all of the county's fleet with dump box, plow, and winter maintenance equipment. A Viking has a cab and chassis that meets the county specs and can complete a turnkey build with an anticipated delivery date of Q4 of this year. The quoted price for this build is $426,400, which is only 2% more than the 2021 build. The procurement of this asset is critical to our winter maintenance operations, and the quick build and delivery date from Viking is even more critical. That's because in March of this year, one of our triaxle plows was involved in an accident that rendered the unit inoperable. Since the accident, we've been working with the county's insurance broker to facilitate the repair or replacement of the plow truck. The insurer is currently undertaking a secondary assessment of the unit to determine if it can be repaired or deemed a total loss. Staff do expect to report back to Council in August with the results of that claim. I would be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, any questions from Council? No questions. We have a motion that council receives the budget approval and procurement of winter maintenance and equipment report. And that council authorized pre-budget approval for the procurement of a tri-axle cab and chassis complete with winter maintenance equipment to replace asset V1008. And that council authorized the Director of Public Works to procure this asset through single source and or direct negotiations in accordance with bylaw 3632-2017, being the County of Perth procurement policy, and that council authorized a single source purchase of a tri-axle cab and chassis complete with winter maintenance equipment as specified through the Viking Sives Limited for the quoted price of $426,420 excluding HST. Moved by Deputy Warden Kellum, second by Councillor Jankowski. All those in favor? Carried. Thanks, John. Okay, we're going to move to bylaws. We have bylaw 3935-2023. It's OPH 217, and that bylaw 3935-2023 be read a first, second, and third time, and finally passed the 6th day of July 2023. Moved by Councillor McDermott, second by Councillor Orr. All in favor? Carried. Then we also have the county fee schedule bylaw. So that's bylaw 3936-2023. Be read a first, second, and third time, and finally passed the 6th day of July 2023. Moved by Councillor McDermott, second by Councillor Aitchison. All in favor? Carried. We do have one notice of motion. I believe they're going to put that up on the screen.
So we'll just go to Councillor Kasenberg.
Councillor Kasenberg, do you want to say what your notice of motion is?
Thank you. Yes, thank you, Warden Eggets. I have submitted for council's consideration at its August meeting a resolution related to housing. If the clerk wishes to show it at this time, that's fine. If you'd prefer me to read it into the record, it's a bit lengthy, but it certainly will be in the council materials for our next meeting. So your call, Warden, on how you'd prefer to proceed at this point.
Okay.
So through the warden, what we'll do is Councillor Kasenberg, with your permission, just to list the title. Is affordable and attainable housing okay with you to list that as the title? And then I will place it on the agenda for August agenda for everybody.
Thank you. Yes.
Okay, do we have any other notice of motions? Oh, okay. Any other business? Oh, council reports. Sorry, Lori said I missed council reports. Hey, do we have any council reports? No, okay. Other business? Announcements? Closed session. We do have.
Right here.
Oops, sorry, Dean.
Yeah, I just thought of it for, just bear with me. It's the event today, this afternoon, to related to economic development. Just permit me to the summer company launch event today at 2:00 till 4 at the Birch and Wynn at 245 Downey Street, Stratford. It's a meet and greet with the summer, I want to call it, I'll probably say it wrong, but the summer students that have engaged in their own entrepreneurship during the summer break. And that it's done in conjunction with Perth County Economic Development. So I just want to remind council and staff of that event this afternoon.
Great, thanks, Dean. And I will be attending as well. So hopefully some of the rest of you can come. We'll see how Councillor Kasenberg.
I think that's not the first time that Dean and I have been confused, actually. Interesting. I just want to advise council and remind that beginning on July 13th, we have the Listowel Agricultural Fair. And we invite all of the members of council and staff who are interested to come and attend, participate in the festivities that celebrates agricultural in a really big way in North Perth. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Aitchison?
So 3 years as warden, I actually finally got to go to that parade my last year. Yep. And I can honestly say it was a great event, Todd. That kind of showed me the ropes at the beginning, but It is something to attend because it's for a small rural fair. It's a big event.
Okay, anyone else? If not, we do have a need for a closed session, so we have a motion that Perth County Council move into closed session at approximately 11:33 a.m. in accordance with section 239 of the Municipal Act, SO 2001 C.25, to consider a matter pertaining to instruction to be applied to negotiations, CAO, a matter pertaining to instruction to be applied to negotiations, CAO, a matter pertaining to instructions to be applied to negotiations, Public Works, a matter pertaining to instructions to be applied to negotiations, paramedics, a matter pertaining to labor relations, planning. We need a mover and a seconder, moved by Councillor Aitchison, second by Councillor Kassenberg. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, so we do have a motion that bylaw 3937-2023, excuse me, a bylaw to confirm proceedings of council of the corporation of the county of Perth at its regular meeting held July 6, 2023 is read a first, second, third time and passed this day of July 6, 2023. Moved by Councillor Duncan, second by Councillor McDermott. All in favor? Carried. And the last motion of the morning is that the council be adjourned at 12:30. Moved by Councillor Jankowski, second by Councillor Orr. All in favor? Carried. Thanks, everyone. Meeting